I don't usually go to meat markets, but I was there with a friend who wanted to celebrate his divorce. It reminded me of my own. It was a petty, bitter situation that quickly escalated into a fight. She had been unfaithful, was caught, and didn't want to take responsibility for her actions. When her lawyer told her that the marriage contract couldn't be annulled, she went on a huge rant. I still have a recording of that speech on my old cell phone, which I saved on purpose, and I listened to it on the anniversary of my divorce to remind myself that I made the right decision. There was no celebration in my divorce. Divorce is an admission of failure, of broken promises, and I don't celebrate failure. I noticed that the club was dominated by mature women, and it suddenly dawned on me that Rex was hunting cougars. Maybe he had issues with his mother. Maybe he was a little perverted. It didn't matter because we were together. He had just turned 40 and I was 44. Sometimes I felt like I was 90. An active lifestyle and the gym kept me in great shape, but there were mornings when I creaked getting out of bed. My doctor once told me that I might be 44, but overall I had the body of a 30-year-old man. In the mornings, my back told me that wasn't quite true. Well, it wasn't my place to judge, so I tried to make the most of it. I danced a lot, and some of the women I danced with were over 60, but they almost wore me out. One very beautiful woman told me she was 67, then smiled. I prefer 69. I had no doubt she was right, and while I was trying to come up with an escape strategy, Rex came running up to me, smiling like a madman and drunk as a skunk. "Who's that hottie?" 20 minutes later, they left, and I didn't see him again until Monday. Deciding I'd had enough entertainment for one day, I headed for the exit. And then she walked in. Her fiery red hair reached almost to her waist. This woman was exactly who I was looking for. The look on her face confirmed my opinion. She was scanning the club like a buffet, trying to find the perfect dish. Her gaze slid over me and then returned. I was sure I was on the short list. The woman with her, on the other hand, was a completely different story. She exuded understated elegance. Her clothes, accessories, and platinum hair didn't scream wealth, but they said she was rich but not worth mentioning. She was perfect, yet completely at ease. It was also clear that this was not her natural environment. She didn't seem awkward, more unimpressed. She sipped a single martini while her friend drank three, interspersing them with dances with her partners. Several young men asked her to dance, but she rejected them with an air of arrogance. She intrigued me, and I approached her when a slow waltz began. "May I have this dance?" She gave me a searching look, then looked away. "I'm 51. Congratulations. Your age doesn't prevent you from dancing?" "No, not if the man is in his 30s. "Then maybe we should find one and warn him not to ask you. I'm much closer to your age than you think, and I'm already over 30. Have a nice evening, ma'am." I had already left the hall when I felt her hand. "I'm sorry, I know I don't want to be here, but I am here. I can dance with a handsome man and enjoy myself. If you still want to—" She was light as a feather and danced very well. I noticed this, and she smiled with a hint of sadness. My husband and I took lessons to stay in shape. I liked it, but not as much as he did, especially when he started dancing the horizontal mambo with one of the instructors. The girl was 25, and she latched onto him. We got divorced so he could marry her. That must have been painful. Yes, it was, at least at first. But on the other hand, we had a very successful business, and we didn't have a prenuptial agreement, so I ended up getting half the business, and our investments had made a nice profit. She squeezed every last penny out of him over 3 years, and in the end, I bought out his half of the business so he could pay her off. He's still president because he's got a good head on his shoulders when it comes to business, but it drives him crazy that he has to report to me. I'm sure if he could start over, he would never have signed up for that course. By that time, we had left the dance floor and found a quiet corner. I smiled. "So you're beautiful, rich, own a business. Why don't you have a Mr. Angela?" She smiled. There were 1 or 2 candidates for the position. Unfortunately, their qualifications didn't meet my standards. What about you? It was my turn to grimace. She got a better offer from a man very similar to your ex. I don't think it's the perfect life she dreamed of. They say he made her sign a pretty strict prenup and watches her like a hawk. After what she did to me, he probably knows that under certain circumstances, she wouldn't think twice about doing the same to him. Is there a beautiful girl in this world who writes Mrs. Reggie? There was one 2 years ago. Let's just say our life goals diverged, and we parted on less than friendly terms. Love is terrible. Personally, I think love is a wonderful thing if you find the right person. I raised my glass. To love, when it's real. She raised hers. To knowing when it's real. We talked for another hour. I was surprised at how quickly the time had passed. I looked back at her and smiled. Looks like your friend found some guys in their 30s. Her smile faded when she saw her friend approaching. When she saw me, she hesitated but continued to smile. Look what I found, Angie. I brought you one, but it looks like you already have a stud. I think I'll leave them both. See you tomorrow. She looked back over her shoulder as they walked away, both guys fighting over her ass. Maybe. Angela looked upset. She was devastated when her husband left her. She got breast implants and had some wrinkles removed, hoping to get him back. He didn't want anything to do with her. And now she's gone down a pretty destructive path trying to make herself look like an attractive woman. Lately, she's only been attracted to bloodsuckers who take advantage of free entertainment and her bank account. I hope she comes to her senses. It's so sad. She's a really nice woman and quite attractive for her age. We have 3 other close friends. We're all going back to college and taking turns trying to look out for her and protect her until she comes to her senses. I've almost lost hope. I have no doubt that one day she'll wake up with a terrible hangover, in bed with a man 25 or 30 years younger than her, trying to remember his name, and then it will dawn on her. I'm too old to be this stupid. And then she'll start to come back. You must always remember that the first person you need to make happy is yourself, and she's clearly not happy. Her face slowly brightened. Thank you, Reggie, for the wonderful advice. I think in the near future I'll be more concerned with my own happiness than with the happiness of others. The phone rang and she looked at it. Uber's here. Will you walk me out? I took her hand, and we walked out, and suddenly she started giggling. What? Don't look. But those platinum bitches are all over me. Why are they doing that? Because they think I won the grand prize. You're the most handsome and fit man here, plus they think, just like me, that you're no older than 30. They think I'm going to take you home for the night and jump into your bed. I grinned. I'm in on that plan. Not in this lifetime, dear. I'm afraid you might cause serious damage. We stood next to the Uber. I think you're underestimating yourself, sweet Angie. I get the feeling you're like a volcano, ready to erupt at any moment and destroy everyone around you. I think that would be a good way to die. Good night, Angela. It was nice meeting a woman of your caliber. Then she smiled. Earthquake, honey. Don't get too close. I'm already too close, I said. The Uber driver looked at us and smiled. Should I go? No. You need to take this treasure to her vault. Good night, Angela. She was still trying to find the words when I closed the door and he drove away. Chapter 2. 3 weeks passed. I thought about the blonde goddess a couple of times, but then dismissed the idea. Rex barely looked at me until I told him that everything that happened in Puma's cave stayed in Puma's cave. Then he relaxed and smiled. She almost killed me. The woman was unconscious for 10 hours. I was starting to worry, but she woke up, looked at her watch, and rushed into the shower. She said we didn't have time because she was late for a family celebration. When we finished, she showed me pictures of her grandchildren and told me she had 4 of them now. I asked if we would see each other again, and she smiled. I doubt it. I'm too old to limit my experiences, and I don't usually repeat myself. Thanks for the evening. So the cougar chewed you up like a piece of meat and now you're ready to go hunting again? That's cruel. Rex just smiled. The world is full of old women, buddy. Want to go hunting again? Rumor has it you left with a very sexy girl. I didn't leave with her. We just talked. And to be honest, she was much prettier than I expected to see in a place like that. You lost, man. You should have hit on her. Dude, hit on her. Are you 16? Maybe you really need to talk to older women. Maybe they can help you grow up. That'll never happen. I already tried acting like a responsible adult with my wife. We all remember how that turned out. I'm not taking women seriously anymore. You won't be married for 2 years. I'll bet you a case of beer that I won't get married. If you win, I'll throw you a party. If I win, you have to give me the beer and say I'm always right. You do have an annoying habit of being right, but not this time. That beer will be the sweetest beer I've ever tasted. Rex walked away, laughing, and I grinned. We'll see about that. Chapter 3. 2 weeks later, I ran into him at tennis, and he was smiling like a cat that had eaten a canary. What's going on with you? Nothing. Just made some unexpected money over the weekend, and it's put me in a good mood. We exchanged blows. He was younger and faster, but he spent too many nights in bars, and I spent too many in the gym. Physical conditioning won out over talent, and I beat him in 2 sets. When we stopped, my knee let me know that the victory had come at a price. We were drying off, getting ready for the shower, when he grinned again. Remember I told you about the extra money? I earned it on you. What did I do? You made a serious impression on Handsome's grandmother. She came to the club to find you. When she was told I knew where to find you, she grabbed me. I thought I was in luck, but she quickly dismissed the idea. She made me an offer. I'll give you $200 if you tell me how to get in touch with Reggie. Better yet, give him this card and tell him to call me. I'd like to talk to him. Man, I thought it would be funny, so I asked her if she was pregnant. My advice, don't piss her off. My jaw still hurts from her slap. Anyway, I promised to give you her message and her business card. Here. When I got home, I looked at the card. It was her card. Angela Bassett, CEO of Bassett Enterprises, with her phone number on the back. It was only 7:30, so I called. Hello? She sounded a little wary, and I realized she didn't recognize the number. Hello. Am I speaking with Angela Bassett, who was voted the most beautiful grandmother in the state 2 years in a row? This is Reggie Wilkes. There was humor in her voice. The same Reggie Wilkes who, according to rumors, was Dorian Gray's successor. How old are you now? 33, 30? I'm old enough to look great holding you in my arms. How are you, Angie? I heard you put a bounty on me. Nothing special. I was thinking about how much it would cost to have you delivered to my house, but then I decided to try the old-fashioned way. What are you doing next Saturday? I don't have any plans. Great. My company is having an awards ceremony, and as the head cheesemaker, I have to be there. My ex is bringing his chewing gum, and I want to show it to him. So you want to use me for my body? How fickle, Angie. Let me explain it to you another way. You come with me to this event and maybe I'll let you do something. What time should I pick you up? Her laughter sounded like a ray of sunshine. I'll pick you up in a limousine. I'll be driving with a gun in my hand. Just so you know, expect unexpected displays of affection all evening. On Sunday, we went out to dinner. She had a very beautiful house, not too big, not pretentious, more with simple, clean lines and elegant. Looking at it through the eyes of a builder, I told her how much I liked it. She frowned for a moment. You should have seen the mansion he talked me into buying. Why would 2 people need 6 bedrooms? This one has 3 and is about the same size. I gave it to him in the divorce, and he lost it in his next divorce. Now he lives in a 1-room apartment and can barely afford it. Life's not sweet for him, is it? First he lost quality, then quantity. Next time, he'll probably be paying by the meter. She shot me a sharp look, suppressing a laugh. Don't make me shout at the table. It won't look good. And thank you, Reggie. I shrugged. Sometimes you have to tell the truth. Omar sounds very tempting, doesn't he? We had a pleasant, leisurely dinner, and the conversation drifted from one topic to another. We talked about places we had been, places we wanted to return to, and places that, even if we saw them in 1,000 years, would still be too soon. Soon dinner was over, and neither of us wanted it to end, so I took her to a small place that not many people knew about. They played folk music there. One week it might be folk singers, the next country or bluegrass. Sometimes African groups played percussion only, and sometimes blues or acoustic jazz. That evening, she sat mesmerized by the performance of a blues duo, consisting of a woman in her 30s and a man in his 50s. He played guitar and keyboards, and on other songs he played bass and harmonica. She was also a very good guitarist. They had a drum and hi-hat, and sometimes it was hard to believe there were only 2 people on stage unless you saw it with your own eyes. When they took a break, the other members of the band looked at us askance. I was wearing a very nice suit, and Angie was dressed from head to toe in a copper-colored silk dress, literally covered with diamonds. Most of them were in jeans and t-shirts. She struck up a conversation with the woman sitting next to her and soon took out her phone, dialing numbers she suggested trying if she liked what she heard that night. Soon, a crowd gathered around her at the entrance to the diner. It was a family establishment, so alcohol was not served. We made it in time for the second performance, and most of the children were already home and asleep. When we left, Angie was still excited and chatting away. I walked her to the door, and she sighed. I really want to ask you out for breakfast tomorrow, but it's too late now. Let's just make it a promise and say that if you're a good boy, really good things will happen to you soon. Okay, good night, Reg. Good night. See you Saturday. Chapter 4. If she seemed outstanding on the date, the dress she wore to the event was stunning. She smiled at my reaction. Shut up, sweetie. I told you I was going all out. Do you like how the girls look? We pulled up to the hotel, and I guessed that her business must be pretty big, judging by the number of people there. There were almost 200 people, and most of them were lined up to kiss her ass. Many of them glanced at me, trying to figure out where I fit into this grand scheme. Angie was gracious and friendly, in perfect combination. We chatted and chatted and chatted, and after about 45 minutes, I sensed her tension. That's my ex, she whispered. I looked up and saw a man of average height, slightly overweight, with a woman who looked barely older than a teenager in his arms. It looked both sad and vulgar. He walked over to us. Angie, he said emotionlessly. She, on the other hand, smiled. Hi, Ben. Let me introduce you to my companion. This is Reggie Wilkes. Reggie, my ex-husband, Ben. He shook my hand slowly in a way that immediately made me suspicious, but perhaps my first impression was clouded by what she had told me about him. He hardly spoke, but the girl with him chattered incessantly. She carried herself well, but her eyes gave her away. She looked at me as if assessing my condition. I had accumulated a considerable fortune through my business, but I doubted I was in the same tax bracket as Angie. I wasn't stupid about money and lived quite well. Angie was polite and seemed to be trying to hold back laughter. We had dinner, which was surprisingly good, and Angie gave a speech that was met with thunderous applause. Then her ex-husband spoke, boringly and uninspiringly, promising that as long as he was at the helm, the company was in safe hands. I got the impression that this opinion was not shared by everyone. The applause was weak at best. Then the orchestra started playing. Angie was an excellent dancer, and I didn't mind dancing, so we stayed on the dance floor for a while. Then she had to perform the obligatory dance with the members of the troupe. I danced with wives and girlfriends. The most popular topic of conversation was how serious our relationship was. I had a standard answer, I'm just a trophy. Tonight she'll take me home, drink me dry, and then kick me out until she needs my services again. Some people thought I was serious, but most of the ladies giggled and said she had made a good choice. I was, how should I put it, dancing with my ex's friend, telling her that at the end of the summer we were going on a grand tour of Europe, staying at my villa in France and my apartment in London, and then maybe flying to the islands. I thought I was going to have to push her away. Angie noticed my disappointment and saved me by gently removing her hands from me. Mine, darling. Mine. Don't despair. You have a consolation prize. Another dance, sweetie? I repeated my words to her and she burst out laughing. Her ex came over to me as I was refilling our drinks. Are you serious? If I get my way, this business might have a new name. He exploded. It's my company. There will be no name and change. The company was yours, and as far as I know, you literally ran it into the ground. Surely you've realized by now that your little brain isn't capable of making sound business decisions. From what I understand, you'd better watch out for bimbo number 2, or you'll end up owning 12.5% of the company. You son of a bitch, What are you going to do, Ben? Look at Reggie. He's wearing an unlined suit. He can't weigh more than 12 pounds and he'll tear you to pieces. I'm ready to watch, so go ahead. I'll make sure no one interferes until you're done. No? Wise decision. Angie turned to me with a sly look in her eyes. Honey, I seem to have lost something. Have you seen this? I clutched my underwear in my hand. I'm sorry, honey. The limo took longer than we thought, and you didn't have time to put it on, remember? She took the item from my hand and grinned at her ex. Thanks for thinking of me, sweetie. I would have worn it, but it would have been a waste of time. You would have taken it off before we even left the parking lot. Suddenly, I really wanted to stay the night. Maybe we should stay. A wave of admiration swept through the room as snippets of the conversation were repeated, and many women and a few men hugged her as we left. Her husband really wasn't very well liked. Chapter 5. She was still giggling as we got into the limousine. Did you see his face? I thought he was going to sink through the floor, and his little sweetheart looked at him with completely different eyes. If she thought she could get away with it, she would have knocked you down in front of everyone. Remind me never to let you catch me again. The evening was fun, although some moments were better than others. Which ones? The ones when I pulled you close and hugged you on the dance floor. You're a very attractive woman, and I noticed. She laughed again. Believe me, dear, when we were pressed against each other, I noticed that you noticed. It was very flattering. If it hadn't been dark in the car, she would have seen me blush. I'm not sorry. I'd be offended if you apologized. We gradually moved closer to each other. Her hands dropped lower, and I heard a sigh and a giggle as she hooked her fingers into the front of my pants. When the car pulled up to her house, it was just as exciting. We adjusted our clothes a little, but we both noticed the driver's smirk. He was probably used to this kind of behavior. We stood on her driveway, smiling like idiots. She gave me a look that I couldn't decipher. I'd love to drag you into bed, but it's too soon. You're the first man I've taken seriously in 100 years, but it's too soon. We need to take it slowly. Nevertheless, it's time you asked me out on a real date. I pretended to be angry. I thought it was a real date. A real date that ended with a man feeling very awkward when a woman sent him home. Don't you have any compassion? I sighed dramatically. On Monday, I sent her flowers to her office with a card. Please accept this as a token of my great love for you. Would you honor me with your company on Friday at 7 o'clock? I knew her personal assistant would read the note and show it to her. She brought the flowers into my office. Boito sent them and asked for a date on Friday. If you're not interested, can I bring him in? Joanna, dear, you know I love you, but if you say something like that again, I'll transfer you. My ex needs a new assistant. I see. If I beg you on my knees, will you let me stay? You're worth your weight in gold, but if you ever say something that stupid again… I understand, boss. Where do you think he's taking you? I'll tell you on Monday. Chapter 6. We had several very pleasant phone conversations throughout the week. I asked her to dress more appropriately, jeans and a comfortable sweater, as the events I had planned were very informal. Later, I learned that she had taken her personal assistant with her to the store to help her choose the perfect pair. I didn't know this, but until then, she didn't have a single pair of jeans in her closet. When I picked her up, I approved of her choice. When she saw me, she smiled. Do you practice sodomy? God, that's a very personal question. I think I'll wait for you to find out for yourself. In the meantime, do you prefer a smooth surface? She blushed 3 shades of red and laughed. I'll return the favor. You'll have to find out for yourself. So where are we going? I took her to a small restaurant with a buffet that I had discovered. The evening menu was posted on the kitchen door, and the dishes were served family style. There were no individual tables, just a few long ones that ran almost the entire length of the room. The food was served in large bowls, and if you wanted seconds of mashed potatoes or meatloaf, you had to ask your neighbor to pass you the bowl. It was rude not to talk, and soon you found yourself engaged in conversation with the person sitting at the table or next to you. Once Angie got used to the idea, she talked almost the entire time. She shared dessert recipes with the little old lady across from her, and makeup tips with the young wife sitting next to her. She talked about sports, cars, and avoided politics. Once she held a baby while its mother went to the restroom, and she beamed with happiness the entire time. She told me she had 2 little grandsons, but they lived in California and she hardly ever saw them. She was very happy, and when we pulled up to the parking lot in front of the concert hall, she just smiled. That evening, an acoustic jazz quartet was performing. Guitar, piano, violin, and accordion. The guitarist was a woman, she and the bassist sang, and the other members of the band sang backup vocals. They played many instrumental pieces that showcased their skill. We recognized some of them, but most were completely new to us. They were selling old CDs, and Angie bought 3. They played a few slow songs and invited anyone who wanted to get up and dance. We danced to 3 songs. This time I made it to her couch, and we were millimeters away from leaving a serious stain on it when she stopped us. I want this very, very much. The problem is, if I get it, I'll want it all the time. Please let me set the pace. I promise that if we stick to this course, the goal will be worth striving for. It's already worth striving for, sweetheart. I can wait, but I don't know if I can hold back much longer. Soon, my sweetheart. My sweetheart? I loved her laugh. She sounded so young. Yes, my sweetheart. I've always wanted to say that to a man, a serious one. 2 agonizing weeks later, she called me and asked if I liked boats. I guess so, I replied. When I was younger, I had canoes and kayaks, and my father had a bass boat when I was a kid. Would you take me out on the boat on Saturday? I have a boat, or rather, my ex had a boat. I made sure I got it in the divorce. I did it to spite him, and it worked. It's in the marina. It's been kept in good working order, but I've never used it. In all the time it belonged to him, he never took me out on it once. I want to see if it's enjoyable enough that I'd want to keep it or put it up for sale. Sure. If I remember correctly, it can be a lot of fun. Give me the address. Thanks, dear. Don't bring anything. I'll prepare everything. Is 8 o'clock too early? That would be perfect. It's still cool and comfortable at that time. In summer, the midday sun reflecting off the water can be very strong. We'll time it so we don't get cold. See you later. It was an elite marina, and I sensed that her boat would be a luxurious model. We headed toward an obviously restored redwood Chris Craft yacht, and I couldn't help but admire it. I was surprised when she drove past it and went all the way to the end of the dock. I think I even caught a glimpse of it. It wasn't a boat. It was a 45-foot float-mounted trailer, almost completely enclosed, with a canopy along the entire length of the upper deck. Is that his boat? No, dear. That's my boat. It's fully fueled. Everything we need is loaded. All we have to do is set sail. Are you ready? The control panels were both upstairs and on the bow deck. I was more comfortable upstairs because I had a better view, and I didn't let her talk, concentrating on getting the boat away from the dock. Once we were out of the marina, we picked up speed, and we were both surprised at how fast she could go. Once we were out in the main channel, we slowed down and continued on our way. Angie handed me a cider, knowing how much I loved it. I took it, suddenly glad I wasn't steering. I would have smashed it to smithereens. I'm feeling better. I have some good plans that don't involve running aground. I have a map that the marina operator gave me, Honey. He said the landmarks would be easy to find, and besides, we have GPS on our phones and a navigation system. Another hour or so and we'll be there. There turned out to be a small cove between one of the lake's large islands and a small island just over 2 acres in size. It was a mountain lake, the first in a chain of lakes running through the low-lying countryside, each becoming increasingly polluted. Here, however, the water was clear and almost untouched, allowing a glimpse into the depths. It was the kind of water you wanted to splash around in on a hot summer day. As soon as the boat dropped anchor, Angie suggested we go for a swim. I told you I'd take care of everything, she said with a mischievous smile. I bought you a swimsuit. It's on the bed. Why don't you change? I didn't realize how spacious it was inside. The living room gallery was impressive. There was a fairly large TV on the wall. The bedroom was smaller with a huge bed that barely fit in it. On it lay a tiny piece of fabric that seemed even smaller. I picked it up and smiled. It was a speedometer, blue in color. I came back, we spent some time together, and now we were hiding in the gallery preparing a light dinner. You don't have to do this, she said, as I helped her. I don't have to. Sometimes I won't do it if we expand our relationship, but sometimes I'll make you sit at the bar with a glass of wine while I impress you with my cooking skills. It's called partnership, dear. Tears welled up in her eyes, and I thought I had done something wrong. Then she smiled. I'll try to pretend I like it when you do that. What would you like for an appetizer? This, I said, unbuttoning her robe and caressing her nipple. She tried to push me away but stopped and moaned when I got a good look at both of them. Finally, she pushed me away. Stop, or we won't get any dinner. They'll be right next to you, I promise. We had a simple dinner and took showers, separately because the shower was too small. I put on boxers, and she put on a silk robe that barely covered her jumpsuit. She put on a jazz CD she had bought at Roots, made a couple of cocktails, and we settled into a surprisingly comfortable sofa. Suddenly, she laughed. He bought this thing thinking he was being smart. Now, there won't be any motel receipts, and all he has to do is pick her up and meet his little bimbo at the nearest marina. I'll never know. And how long did this go on? Until I saw her for the first time. The car was registered to both of us, and the video recording and duplication were inexpensive. I let him go 3 times to gather enough material, and then I used it to get better terms. I let him know I was taking the car and gave him the Corvette, which was worth half as much in exchange. The first whore took it when she divorced him. I'm sorry to ask, but why did you marry such an idiot? There was sadness in her voice. Hugh was a good man when we got married. As we became more successful, he became more arrogant, believing that his success justified everything. Age started to play a role, and to be honest, I think she was the physical equivalent of a sports car during his midlife crisis. She wasn't smart, but she was very quick-witted and pretty quickly tied his hands and feet, asking him why he was still with a tired old woman when he could be seen all over town with her on his arm. When I caught them, it played right into her hands. I didn't care anymore. She was fascinated by him. Instead of admiring his actions and the people he was with, most people thought he was a fool, and many even felt sorry for him. I think when he realized that, he suppressed his ego for a while, and then she set him up, and he had nothing left to brag about for his bad decisions. The company was practically mine, and he had no choice but to accept it. It's very similar to what happened to us. I thought I had it all, but she preferred more sophisticated things, and it didn't take her long to find someone else once she decided to move on. I couldn't come to terms with it for a long time, and I developed a fear of relationships. I think I already told you, but things didn't work out the way she planned. It's one thing to please a young, sexy mistress, but it's quite another to give her the keys to the safe after the wedding. The prenuptial agreement was pretty strict, and by that time she had already burned all her bridges, so I had to accept it. I heard she has welfare, and if she goes over her limit, she'll be broke for the rest of the month. I hope it all ends badly in the next couple of years. After all, he's already proven that he's not above playing games with people. Maybe yours and mine will find each other after their next divorce. That would be funny. Time to sleep. She took off her robe and twirled around in it a couple of times before getting into bed. We made plans for the future, but she fell asleep as soon as we snuggled up together. I smiled in the dark, feeling her breath. Quality was more important than quantity. This lifestyle suited me just fine. Chapter 7. We spent the rest of the weekend in bed and in the water, returning to the marina just before sunset on Sunday. As we sailed back, I asked her if we were going to see each other exclusively. Even in the dim light, I could see her eyes sparkle. I have an idea to throw you overboard. I haven't had another man in almost a year, and I'm perfectly happy with the one I have now. Any more stupid questions? No, honey. Good. How about you? I haven't been with anyone for a long time, but I'll tell you that since I first saw you at the club 2 weeks ago, I haven't been with anyone. I promise you, I like what we have, and I don't want to ruin it. So, are we officially a couple now? Should I draw up a contract? I just held her tighter. No. I think a verbal agreement is best in cases like this, don't you think? Of course. We stood on the pier for a few minutes while I gathered my thoughts. What now? Now we'll go our separate ways and think about this weekend and what it means to each of us. In a couple of days, when you've had time to think things over, gather up the things you left at my place, bring them over on Wednesday or Thursday, and we'll see what happens. How about Monday or Tuesday? Don't put it off. I need to sort things out. I haven't been in a relationship for a long time. I need to relax. So we did. I arrived on Thursday and she practically dragged me into the house. I left on Sunday evening and returned on Wednesday. Almost 2 months passed before she invited me to her house to talk. In her mind, talking usually meant that she would talk and I would agree. One day, she asked me why I did everything I could for her. Because I like making you happy. I love making you happy. Over time, if I really decide you're making the wrong decision, or I just don't like what I hear, you'll know about it. I believe you're smart enough to understand the difference between love and weakness. She beamed. Okay. I've decided that I like you enough to try living with you on a permanent basis. When can you move all your stuff here and move in with us for good? God, that's so unexpected. I don't know how... Tomorrow, most of my things are already here. I'll put a few things in storage and maybe find a rental agency in a few months. There's no point in keeping an empty house. I took her hands in mine. Now let's talk business. You own your house and I own mine, so you won't have to pay rent. I insist that we split the utility bills 50-50. I can't stand the thought of being considered a freeloader, and you know how fast rumors spread. The same goes for housework. I'm sure we can agree that you're better at laundry, but I'm pretty good at everything else, so I can take care of that too. And if you can't stand being pampered, now's the time to say no. I know how much you love working outside. The lawn care will be canceled next week, and we'll consider that compensation for the laundry. Everything else will be split. Let's seal the deal with a kiss. No, let's go to the bedroom. All kinds of rumors circulated about her. Angie just grinned when her ex tried to warn her that I was a gold digger and posted our photos on her desk and wall. Bimbo number 2 made crude hints about a ring, but he had his own problems, so he left it at that. After 6 months, we worked out a schedule. I preferred mornings, so I usually got up first, made coffee, and prepared a light breakfast. She usually took care of lunch. I mowed the lawn and came to her with an idea I was willing to pay for. In the end, we split the costs, and I built a summer kitchen and patio. Angie put on sweaters and helped when she could. even when I told her she didn't have to. This is our home, and I'm not going to sit on the sidelines of any project we do to improve it. The work took almost 3 months, and when we finished, we were incredibly proud. The small covered space accommodated a great gas grill, a charcoal grill, a four-burner gas stove built into a granite countertop, and a small refrigerator and deep sink. We could have easily hired contractors, but that wasn't the point. The point was that we did it together, and it was a labor of love. Friends would come over from time to time, especially after we redid the exterior of the house. Angie would sometimes bring clients. I had to talk her out of it. It's much more effective to invite them to your home than to some sterile restaurant. It establishes a more personal connection. It's your home. It's where you live. You show them a part of yourself that they don't usually see, and that usually changes their perception of you, often for the better. They relax and become much more open to any conversation you start. Don't let them talk about business while they're here, except for the most general phrases. Her business partners were impressed. It was easy to see. They were used to dealing with her ex-husband, with whom it was all about business and sometimes hard liquor and strip clubs. He had offended one of the suppliers so badly that Angie asked him to come and apologize, insisting that he bring his wife with him. They were supposed to book a hotel room, but she called his wife and insisted that they stay the night. This started happening once a quarter, and in return, he invited us to his place about once every 6 months. It usually turned into shopping for the ladies and sporting events for us, but it was all a lot of fun. Once we took them out on a boat, and they liked it so much that they bought their own. Angie continued to introduce me as her life partner. At first it was flattering, but now it was starting to get on my nerves. Chapter 8. Almost a year after I moved in, I met her son and his family. They lived on the other coast, and she rarely saw them. When he called and asked if he could come over, she was overjoyed until I made her change her mind. I have to disappear so you can have a good time. She slapped me across the face. You're part of my life now. They know about you. I've sent them pictures. So no, just no. He was very much like his mother, but I saw his father's features in him too, especially in some of his facial expressions. Still, he wasn't particularly friendly, but he didn't growl at me either. His wife and children were a different story. The boy was 9 and the girl was 7. Heather was a California blonde. When she and the kids saw the garden, they were thrilled because it was the closest thing to real food they had ever seen. Without hesitation, I promised them that we would go to the farmer's market on Saturdays. Angie bought a house and 3 acres of undeveloped land at a time when there were no neighbors nearby. I wanted to plant a vegetable garden, but the woman in charge of the HOA saw me digging in the ground and stormed into the yard, yelling at me to stop. She then proceeded to list all the association rules I had broken and said she would make sure we were fined. The downside of this plan was that Angie and her lot weren't part of the development. She was already living there, and the development was growing on both sides of her. I just laughed and started digging, trying to be very careful. When the plot was ready, Angie helped me put up a white fence around it. Nothing was visible from the street. She immediately started working on the garden, advising me to grow tomatoes, lettuce, and green beans. She tirelessly searched for information on websites and ordered everything she needed for her 10 acres of land. I helped her choose based on the space available, and she immediately wanted to expand the garden. The HOA president got into a loud argument and threatened to tear down the fence. I just smiled and said that might not be the best idea she'd ever had, and she decided to take it to court. Angie took the day off to be with me. The president pulled out diagrams, charts, laws, and made some pretty convincing arguments. Then it was our turn. Angie showed the judge the deed to the land, and when she read it, she laughed and banged her gavel. Case dismissed. We thought the woman was going to faint when the judge explained to her that since our property was not part of her development, we could do whatever we wanted with it, within reason. The judge had to threaten her with a weekend in jail to get her to shut up. Angie flashed me a malicious look when she asked me to make a frame for her stuffed animal for next month. While I was working on it, she went shopping. When the stuffed animal was ready, she dressed it in the same clothes as the HOA president, right down to the big straw hat she liked to wear in the summer. Angie may have exaggerated the size of her butt a little. It took 2 bales of hay to stuff those stretch pants. She grinned. I read about a guy who was in a similar situation, and that's exactly what he did. I couldn't think of the better way to show her up. Every time she drove past our house to get to hers, she saw it. The other owners laughed at it, but made sure she didn't see them. She lost when her term expired, and the new person was much more lenient toward the owners. He even put a proposal to a vote to allow small vegetable gardens in the backyards provided they were properly fenced. Suddenly, we got to know our neighbors much better as they came to us for advice. I went a little overboard and bought a huge tiller with rear tines, which sat idle after I prepared the ground, so I offered my help. Angie would come over and sit with the wives on the patio or in the air-conditioned house while my husband and I toiled under the scorching sun. Soon they created a Facebook group where they shared tips and bragged about the vegetables they wanted to show off. If they had more than they needed, they offered it to the group. Almost nothing went to waste. On Saturday, Heather arrived without her younger son. When I asked, she said he wanted to talk to his mom alone. Something was wrong. We got into her rental car because it already had the car seats in it. She seemed to really enjoy the market even though she hardly smiled. The kids ran around trying to see everything. In addition to fresh vegetables, there was a group of artisans. Potters, painters, jewelers. There was even a guy who would write a whole poem for a customer for $10 and print it out on his laptop. I thought it was silly, but he told me he made 200 or 300 a day. Not bad for a starving student writer. The children stumbled upon an artist painting faces and practically begged me to let him paint theirs. Heather hesitated, but I smiled and pointed to the children. He's a lion, and she's a tigress, all over their faces. I stepped back and talked to one of the craftsmen while Heather joined the children. The intricate designs on their faces made me smile. He smiled. "Does Angie know you're having fun with that cute girl?" Heather blushed, then smiled one of her rare smiles. "Mom knows, but if a girl can't trust her father-in-law, who can she trust?" That caught me off guard, and I blinked a few times. The kids wanted to pick up the crystals, and she looked embarrassed, but Bob smiled. "Now you'll learn how convenient it is to have a rich father-in-law. If he's honest, he'll buy his grandchildren anything they want." Damn that dust, I forgot how bad it is this time of year. Before Heather could object, Lynette picked out a pair of earrings shaped like little fairies holding tiny crystals. Jeremiah got a necklace with a perfectly shaped crystal. It was supposed to bring good luck and protection. Lynette heard Bob's words and hugged my knees. "Thank you, Grandpa." Jeremiah thought he was too old for hugs, but he smiled. "Thank you, Grandpa." I held Lynette in my arms, and she seemed very comfortable. Bob showed Heather a ring with a crystal surrounded by gold rings in the shape of a flower. I bought it for her without hesitation, and didn't blink when Bob told me how much I owed him. "I can't take that." I smiled. "I know you don't get here often, but you don't want to disappoint your grandfathers. It looks great on you." Bob told me it had been sitting in his closet for a year, waiting for the right finger. Don't fight the magic. I was still holding Lynette, only now she was asleep. Heather was holding my hand, and Jeremiah took her other hand, and we walked. I was so proud that it felt like my feet weren't touching the ground until we got back to the car. The children jumped out of the car before we even got onto the highway. I was silent for a few minutes. I'm a pretty perceptive person, and you should remember that in the future, and I feel like something's wrong. Why don't you tell me what's going on so Angie and I can help you? She tried to argue, but the words died on her lips. Then she said, "We're broke. We had to spend every last penny to get here." I wondered what Junior was saying to Angie while she was telling me about her troubles. Junior had been fired under less than pleasant circumstances and was having a hard time finding work. They had always lived in luxury, but the money was quickly running out. He was a lot like his father, but I didn't pay much attention to that. They lost their house, their leased car, and had to take their children out of private school. Coming here was killing him, but we had no choice. We asked his father first, but because of his personal decisions, she snorted with disgust. He couldn't. Mom is our last hope. Don't worry too much about Angie. She won't leave her grandchildren unattended. Neither will I. What does he want? I have no idea. I think a short-term loan. Something to tide us over until we find work. He doesn't want me to work, but if I find a job before he does, it will be a burden for him. I knew Angie. She wouldn't let her child and his family go hungry. I also knew she wouldn't just hand over money to her younger son if he was anything like his father. He'd get something, but there'd be a catch. When I asked Heather how much money they had, she blushed and didn't answer. I made her pull into the parking lot of the bank where I worked, took out $1,000 in cash, and handed her an envelope. Don't worry, don't argue. Just put it in your purse and spend it as you see fit. And if you say a word about paying me back, I'll be deeply, deeply hurt. You'll lose your status as my favorite daughter-in-law very quickly, understand? I decided to leave to give her time to think. By the time we got home, she had calmed down. Angie and Junior were waiting in the living room. Lynette burst into the house and jumped into her lap. Grandma, I'm a tiger cub. Look what Grandpa bought me. Aren't they cute? I saw him tense up, but Angie just smiled and hugged the girl. They're adorable. Grandpa never gave me anything so cute. That wasn't entirely true, considering the ring I had hidden in the shed. I just hadn't found the right moment to give it to her yet. That's because I'm the youngest and the only girl. Grandfathers are supposed to do things like that. At least that's what Jenny says. Your friend Jenny seems very smart. Jeremiah, did you buy anything? He smiled and pulled a necklace from under his shirt. My grandfather's friend said it would protect me from evil spirits. Mom bought something too. She hesitantly showed Angie the ring. Angie looked at me in surprise, then tears streamed down her cheeks. And now I'll have to keep an eye on your grandfather or you'll drown in jewelry. Linny, would you and Jeremiah help me bake some cupcakes? Soon they were holding hands and dragging each other to the kitchen. The younger one stared at me for a moment. You're not their grandfather. Heather cried out. I just looked at him calmly. No, not your grandfather, not by blood. Do you think that matters to them? Does it hurt a child to think that there are people in the world who love him? Where's your father, Benny? Is he too busy to see his only grandchildren, the immortality he bequeathed to them? Do you understand how precious that is? Probably not, but you'd better learn. I kissed Heather on the cheek and left. Chapter 9. I went out to the shed and spent about 40 minutes sharpening my tools. My father had taught me from an early age that hoes, shovels, and mattocks were like knives. They cut, in this case, the earth. If they had a sharp edge, they did their job better. When I was done, I picked up a pair of pruning shears, and by the time I was finished, I could have cut my hair with them. There was a soft knock, and Heather asked if she could come in. I just nodded, and she stood up hesitantly. Please don't hold it against him. He's faced the worst blow a man can face. He can't provide for his family. I understand, dear, but that's all the more reason not to push away a helping hand. His father made the wrong choices in life. It's not Junior's fault, it's his. His bright future with a woman of exceptional qualities disappeared in a single day between the legs of a whore, and he'll never get it back. He needs to come to terms with his choices and try not to repeat them. His son has a choice to make too. Angie has told me many times how much she misses you, especially her grandchildren. Heather will take care of her family, I know her well enough to understand that. But I also know she won't just blindly give him money and hope for the best. She's wanted you to live here for years, and now she has a chance. I'd bet she'll offer him a job, as sure as there's a ring on your finger. He's her heir, not me. I've already told her I want nothing to do with her company. I'm not the one who should be running it. Change the subject. Where were you? We were staying at the Marriott for one night. After that, I don't know. I could, but I need to talk to your mother-in-law first. Come on, it's almost dinner time, and Jeremiah doesn't like to skip meals. She hugged me tightly. I wish they were your grandchildren. I'd sleep so much better. I looked around the kitchen, noticing the mess left behind after the kids had tried their hand at baking and made a decision. We're going to grill tonight. I asked Heather what they'd like to eat and sent her to the store in my car. Junior went with her. I wondered what they would talk about. Angie put the kids to bed after cleaning up, and we took advantage of that to tidy up the kitchen. Did you have fun? Her face lit up. I wish I had filmed it. Heather helped until she went to look for you. Junior went to his father's for a while. She started to cry. I wish they could have stayed. Lynette loves them so much, dear. She said Grandpa Reggie would make her some of the corn you picked today. You don't mind them calling you Grandpa, do you? Just like I hate it when you call me sweetheart. God, that's disgusting, she giggled. Yeah, maybe I'll call you something else. How about sweetheart? Ugh, keep sweetheart. Okay, she said. Linny woke up. Grandpa, are we going to cook the corn? Yes, we will. Come with me. I'd already put the corn cobs in ice water, and they were ready. I sat Linny on a large chair at the kitchen table and showed her how to move the pokers aside to pour the oil inside, then close them tightly. I tied them tightly with fireproof ties, and they were ready to use. By then, Jerry had woken up and come to help. Their mom came in, and they rushed to her to see if she had brought their favorite foods, hot dogs and hamburgers. She had, along with steaks, chops, and chicken breasts. Jer helped me rub the chicken thoroughly and wrap it in foil. Mom rubbed the steaks and chops, leaving them to rest and come to room temperature. Then, Angie took over to help with the side dishes, coleslaw, French fries, and sliced zucchini that had been marinated and was ready to fry. The cupcakes, our dessert for the evening, stood proudly in the display case. Junior decided to stay with his father, and I think Heather was glad about that. I made enough for 3 large servings knowing they would want to try a little of everything. Linny ate 3 pieces of chicken, 3 pieces of steak, a few French fries, and a whole ear of corn, giggling as she pulled the charred leaves off. Jerry managed to eat a hot dog, half a chop, and a steak, refusing everything else except the corn cob. Then we all had a piece of cake. Linny brought me a piece so proud she could have burst with happiness. The frosting was about 2 inches high. I baked it for you, Grandpa. She beamed with pride. Thank you, sweetheart. It looks wonderful. She watched anxiously as I ate every bite. They looked happy when Heather told them they were all staying the night and ran their baths. When they were in their pajamas, I picked up Linny, and Angie took Jer and rocked him gently until he fell asleep. They woke up when we put them in their beds and insisted that we take turns reading them stories. Angie held my hand tightly the whole time, looking as if she were about to burst with happiness. Heather sat in the living room with a glass of wine. Thank you. You have no idea what it's like to be able to relax. I remember, Angie said. Junior was a hyperactive child and demanded a lot of attention. Well, while you're here, you have built-in babysitters. You may get tired of having to come and rescue them. It might take some time, and I'd like to get to that point. It all depends on your son. Angie sat down next to her and hugged her. I know, dear. I'm working on it. That night, lying in bed, we had a rather tense conversation. Do you know about their situation? I asked. Very well. I was so angry when I'd found out they should have come home. We would have taken care of them. I think your son is just as unreasonable as your ex. What did you talk about while Heather and the kids were at my place? He has a plan to get rich, and he wants me to invest money in it. $1 million. I have that kind of money, but it's not just sitting there, and even if it was, I wouldn't give it to him until I looked into it. I told him I wanted to get to the bottom of it first, and he got angry. They're broke. It's their last night at the hotel. They can come stay with us, but he won't let them. Do you mind if I offer you a solution? I'm all ears. Last week, the tenants moved out of my house. I knew it would only be for 6 months, but they moved out. And the only reason they needed the house was to have a place to live while their house was being built. Let them live there for free. It will give them a chance to be alone while they recover from what happened. Maybe we can find Heather a job while he gets his house in order. I was the third owner of a construction company and one of the managers on site in case of emergencies. I decided that an emergency had arisen and spent a week out of town finishing an office complex. The unions weren't giving us a break, and some suppliers were pressuring us with offers to limit material deliveries. I was in a bad mood, so I let all the company's employees go and sent them to other projects. 2 days later, a for sale sign appeared in front of the house, which shocked everyone. The unions threatened me, but I was right and told the truth to the newspapers and local TV stations, backing it up with facts and figures. The unions suddenly found themselves under pressure from their members, who had nowhere to turn, and politicians began demanding permits and investigations. Suppliers had heart attacks when I canceled orders worth about $2 million. We have a contract. Yes, you do. And in that contract, in small print, it says that if you are late with delivery more than 3 times a month, we have the right to find other suppliers. Good day. Everyone tried to make me look bad, but the public wasn't fooled. A month later, we came back with better contracts from suppliers, and the unions became much more flexible in their new goals. Both of my partners thought I was a genius, but I was just angry and wanted to get back at someone. 9 days after I left, I walked out of the trailer that housed the construction company's office and saw Angie sitting in her Mercedes. She looked scared but determined. When I approached her, she got out of the car and it seemed like our hearts were beating faster. As she came up to me, she froze, trying to say something. Finally, I gave in and took her back to the office. I looked at the engineers and assistants, and they all suddenly wanted coffee from the nearby cafe. I closed the door behind them. We sat and talked until the team gathered the courage to return. I looked at my assistant. You'll be working alone for the rest of the project, Mark. You're showing good results, so consider this a test. If you can handle it, we can always find another project manager. And Mark, no nonsense. Understand? They'll be watching you and watching you closely. In your first test, you're going to be persistent and not give up. Understand? Good. See you at the office. He arrived a week early and $20,000 under budget. He brought in 10 of our employees, and I told him to give each of them $1,000 as a bonus and to make sure he handed it to them himself. I gave him 3. Angie and I gradually returned to normal life, but I wasn't as happy as I should have been. I was bothered by the fact that she avoided talking about marriage. If she wanted to wait, I didn't mind, as long as everything worked out in the end. I remembered my first marriage before it ended badly, and realized that I liked being married, having a connection and a document proving to the world that we were one. Now her son was around and she was very tense. Chapter 10. 2 weeks later, she broke the bad news to her son. She had looked into his offer and found that it was nothing more than a pyramid scheme. Angie insisted that he work for her for a short time just to earn some money. At first he resisted, but then Heather lost patience and got a job herself. She got a job at a construction company as an office assistant. The salary was above average, and not because she was. The fact is that my partners and I decided from the outset to hire the best people and pay them accordingly. Sarah was responsible for all the office work, and one of her first decisions was to organize a free daycare center for our employees. You have no idea how stressful it can be to pay for childcare, especially for a single mother. Do this, and we'll have employees for life. She was a single mother herself, and her share in the startup was covered by her grandmother's inheritance. David and I had talked about starting our own business before, but it was just talk. She was the office manager at our old firm and basically pushed us to start our own thing. We were so grateful to her that we named the company SDR Construction, for Sarah, David, and Reggie. David was an engineer and I worked in construction. We had a very good reputation, and some of our corporate clients were unhappy with their management, so they gave us a chance. 10 years later, we were a multi-million-dollar construction company known for excellent quality at a reasonable price. Our old company was so angry when we left and took several employees with us that they threatened to sue. Our lawyer told us they could try while he took care of the paperwork, and we should tell them to go to hell. We let Sarah tell them because she had been through a lot of trouble in office politics over the years. She said it was one of the best times of her life. If I arrived before Heather, she would drop off her children before taking them to daycare. I was hugged and kissed, and I loved starting my day that way. Heather always kissed me on the cheek. A month later, I came to work and noticed that everyone was smiling at me. There was a huge mug on my desk with pictures of Linny and Jeremiah. On the other side was written, "Best Grandpa Ever." What caught my eye most was a small mug with a photo of Heather and the words, "Best Father-in-Law Ever." I put them on the shelf so that every morning the first thing I saw was them, next to the photo of Angie and me. Heather was called into Sarah's office and told that her job had changed. Now she would be doing errands for the company. She needed good transportation, and she had to choose a suitable SUV that would fit everything. When she stopped crying, she made me go with her to the Ford dealership, where she chose the same model as mine, a 4-door Sport with a small trunk. Angie just grinned when she told me about it. The closer I got to Heather and the kids, the more distant her husband became. One day, Ben Sr. came up to me, apparently to threaten me. "Stay away from my grandchildren. They're not yours." I think I made him nervous because I smiled. "Have you told them that?" "Oh, you'll have to spend time with them to do that, won't you?" "How much time have you spent with them since they've been here? Have you taken them anywhere or just sat at home watching them play?" "According to them, no. And whether I'm on stage or not, you need to change that. If you want them in your life, the best way to get them in your life is to include them in your life." The aggression burst out of him like air from a balloon. "Casey doesn't really care about them." "Then you have to make a choice, Bimbo Barbie or your grandchildren. It shouldn't be that hard, but I don't know your priorities. Honestly, I won't interfere in their lives if Angie or the kids' parents let me, but I don't think that's possible. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to pick up the toys. Want to help?" I must have made an impression on him because he followed me into the house. Angie and Heather were knocked off their feet when he came out of the house, and the kids pounced on both of us. It was a pretty complicated structure, but I had a construction company, and once Benny figured out what was going on, he was pretty good at it. Within an hour, he was pushing Jeremiah, and I was pushing Linny. The girls took their seats, and we drank beer and watched. There were tears in his eyes. I've made so many stupid decisions in my life. From what I've heard, I agree with you. We don't know each other very well, but today, I saw a different side of you. Stupid decisions are what we ultimately learn from. So why don't you come to our weekly Sunday event? Heather took a lot of photos, which she posted on her Facebook page later that evening. They showed Benny, me, and the kids eagerly awaiting the event. In the last photo, we were pushing the kids on the seesaw, and the caption read, "Grandpa's Rule." When everyone left, Angie praised me. "You're going to get a huge dose of love today. How did you do it?" "I didn't do anything unusual. Honey, you know that if I have something to say, I'm not shy about saying it. He deserves to be in their lives if he can. I know my heart would break if I lost them." She cried as she scolded me and almost ruined her mood. Fortunately, by evening, she had calmed down. Chapter 11. Benny and I had established a kind of truce. He came over about every other Sunday to barbecue. Sometimes he helped out, but mostly he played with the kids. Bubblegum Barbie noticed that he was pulling away from her and gave him an ultimatum, but he didn't respond. 2 weeks later, she left the townhouse. She took all her clothes and jewelry, but when he said she couldn't take the sports car he had leased for her, she broke down. When she stopped talking, he said she could take the car and the 27 remaining lease payments. Heather was happy and liked her job. She was treated like any other employee, even though her father-in-law was one of the owners. At first, it only happened occasionally, and she put up with it. Then, everyone started picking on her, just like the other employees, but she just smiled and ignored them. I looked at my life and realized that only two things could make it perfect. The first was the day Angie and I would walk down the aisle. The second was when Junior would finally calm down and accept his life. For some reason, he had decided that all his problems were directly related to me. Angie and I had several tense discussions about his attitude toward me, and when Heather tried to talk to him about it, everything went haywire. It turned into a full-blown nothing-to-hide discussion, which made him realize that if he didn't like his life here, he had two options. Either make it better for himself or leave, but she and the children would stay. He spent a few nights on his father's couch until he got tired of it and kicked him out, telling him to be a man and go back to his family. He returned home, but he was gloomy and often lashed out at the children. Heather was on the verge of a nervous breakdown when the situation suddenly took a turn for the worse. Angie fired him. It nearly killed her, and she spent many nights clinging to me and crying until morning. She started to trust him, and he began to behave much better. But he still harbored resentment and wanted to return to California. Heather didn't approve of the idea. "Why do we need that? I already broke this family and started over. I don't want to do that again," she sighed. "You need to think about this. You're making more money now than you did in your best year in California, and unless you've turned into a loudmouth idiot, you probably realize that your parents are hoping you'll take over the business in a few years. I have a job I really love, we don't have a mortgage or a car loan, most of our expenses are living expenses, and we live pretty well. But the most important thing is the kids. They love it here. They adore your mom. And they think both grandfathers can change the world if they want to. Think about how they'll feel if we just pack up and leave. They only have one grandfather. The other one is just a loser who lives with their mother." Heather hit him hard. "Don't ever say that in front of me again, not in this life or the next. In case you haven't noticed, we live in the loser's house for free. I drive the car he gave me. And if I call and say I need it, whatever I need is here in a heartbeat." Lynette recently told me that when she grows up, she wants to build houses like her grandfather. I think Jeremiah is going to be the next business tycoon. He loves going to the office with his grandfather, Benny. We have a very bright future, dear. He thought about it for a few days, then, taking advantage of his position, he borrowed $200,000 from the company's funds to invest in the business he had always wanted to do. The plan was to invest the money, make a profit, get out of the business, return the money, and keep making a profit until he had enough to return to California with peace of mind. The plan failed when the profits dried up and the scheme collapsed, leaving many investors with losses. The accountants uncovered it 3 weeks later. Angie fainted when she found out, and her assistant called Ben and me. They called an ambulance and took her to the hospital for observation. We met in the emergency room, and the doctor told us she was in severe shock and had to stay overnight. Ben and I paced the ward for 4 hours, and he only went home when his new girlfriend came to pick him up. She was even younger than the model, but only by 8 years. She didn't let him do much, kept him on a tight leash, and her grandchildren adored her. He hadn't admitted it to himself yet, but he was so in love with her that he couldn't take his eyes off her. One day, while we were messing around with the grill and Angie and Vicky were watching the kids in our new pool, he told me he was tired of apartment living and was looking for a house. Vicky was actively helping him, just to get a woman's opinion, he explained. What he really meant was that he was going to buy the house she chose. It occurred to me that he was really going to get married, and I felt uneasy. I didn't leave the hospital, sleeping in a chair by her bed. She woke up around 3, and I held her in my arms for another 2 hours until she calmed down. Then the day shift came and gave her another sedative. She was discharged in the afternoon, and Heather came to take her home. When she was wheeled out, Heather noticed how fragile she looked and burst into tears. In the end, I got behind the wheel and they sat in the back seat and hugged each other. We got her settled in the house and Heather told me what was going on in her life. He left, Dad. I came home and the bedroom was a mess. He packed up as many clothes as he could and disappeared. I don't know if he'll come back. 6 months later, she started calling Angie Mom. Her parents had retired to Portugal, and if she was lucky, she saw them once every 4 years. So we became the mom and dad she could turn to with any problem. When she first called me Dad, she smiled. I call Angie Mom, and you're the best dad in my life, so if you don't mind, I'll be Dad. I didn't mind. Chapter 12. Heather checked the bank accounts and found that he had emptied them. There was a decent amount left in the savings account. She had told me once that sooner or later I would probably kick them out of the house and they needed a backup plan. Angie explained to me that they had actually been saving for a down payment on a house I would build for them on one of her acres. Heather was furious and spent most of the week with us. The kids were thrilled, but eventually they wanted to go home. 2 weeks later, Angie was so angry that she put a GPS tracker on his car, which belonged to her company. According to the app, he was in a small town in Texas. Ben and I flew out after him. We found him in a small bar with a hole in the wall, telling the bartenders what a great businessman he was. As long as he was paying, they agreed with him. Ben patted him on the shoulder. Son, it's time to go home. He turned on his bar stool and his eyes widened. Then he saw me. You came to mock me, you bastard? You took my family away from me, you son of a bitch. I threw up every time Heather said, Reggie did that, or you should see what Reggie gave the kids. Then he turned to my father. And you. You just stood there and let him take everything from me. What kind of man are you? Benny stared at him for a long time. You know what Reggie took from me? Not a damn thing. Everything I had I threw away long before I ever heard his name. It took me a while to get my head out of my ass, but I did it. I'm closer to your mother now than I was when we got married. She's my friend now, and I haven't had any friends in a long time. But you know what? It's not about Reggie, it's not about your mom, and it's not even about me. It's about you and what you've done. Now get off that stool and go home and face the consequences of your actions. I didn't expect that, otherwise I would have reacted differently. He jumped off the bar stool and punched my father right in the face. The man fell and lost consciousness. He stood there grinning, swaying slightly. You want some, old man? I grinned. Yes, actually, I do. I'd like to say that it was an epic fight, and we fought all over the bar and then went outside to continue, but that didn't happen. The younger guy knew nothing about fighting. I did. My father was an amateur champion when he boxed at Golden Gloves as a teenager, and he was on the elite boxing team in the Marine Corps. Military service taught him a whole new perspective on fighting, and he passed that on to me. I didn't box, but I wrestled in college, and he made sure I trained just in case. It helped me a lot early in my construction career. Sometimes you just can't change someone's mind. Sometimes you just have to prove yourself right. In Junior's case, I felt I had to prove myself. He threw a clumsy right punch. I grabbed his arm as he swung past, jerked it, and twisted his hip. That sent him flying to the floor. He got up and lunged at me again. I dodged again, using his momentum to slam his face into the bar. I could have kept going all day, but the deputy sheriff patted me on the shoulder. You can stop. We'll take care of this. The bartender yelled and knocked him to the ground. Another deputy dragged the young man across the bar to handcuff him while medics checked on Benny. He was badly injured and taken to a local hospital to be evaluated for a concussion. We didn't have to press charges. The bartender and the cops were happy to do it for us. Disturbing the peace, damage to personal property, technically my fault. When I threw him across the room, he landed on a chair that broke under him. 2 counts of assault and 1 count of assault on a law enforcement officer when he hit the deputy, who was handcuffing him. She put a baton between his legs and hit him. He immediately became more cooperative. Bail was set at $25,000, and neither Benny nor I were inclined to pay it. He spent 3 weeks in jail before his first hearing. On the advice of his public defender, he pleaded guilty to lesser charges, was found guilty, sentenced to 1 year in prison, and released with credit for time served and probation. He also had to reimburse the bartender for the cost of the chair and pay a $5,000 fine. Angie flew in and paid, but on condition that the state allow him to serve his probation at home. This effectively locked him up, which did nothing to improve his mood. 3 weeks after his return home, Heather asked him to leave. "You're not the man I married. Why aren't you happy? You had everything, and you were too stupid to appreciate it." They were at home. The children were with us. He stepped back to hit her, and she laughed in his face. "Go ahead. But once you stop waving your arms around, you'd better run. Dad will hunt you down, even if he has to search the ends of the earth. And I want to be there when he finds you." He left 3 hours later, but returned 2 days later because Angie called and said that if he didn't come back before he had to report to his parole officer, he would be on his own. By that time, Benny had found a place and allowed him to live in his apartment until the deal was finalized. Heather wasn't kidding, and when she handed him the divorce papers and filed for temporary alimony, he flew into a rage. Angie told him he couldn't work at the company anymore and he was out of a job. If he didn't find work soon, he would be in violation of his parole. I pondered the whole situation while Heather cried on my shoulder and Angie stroked her from the other side. Angie had been depressed for almost 2 months. Heather's nerves were on edge, and even the children were starting to feel the tension. It made them withdraw from us even more. After we put Heather to bed, I told Angie I needed to go out. "Go out? Now. It's late." "I won't be long. Just don't cover yourself with all the blankets while I'm gone." Angie loved blankets. Many times I woke up with my head uncovered and she was wrapped in a blanket like a cocoon. I tried several times, but in the end I decided to keep a spare blanket by the bed. In the morning, she always apologized, but it was hard for her to hold back a smile. "Should I bring you a hot water bottle? I'll be gone for a while, and when I get back, I'll hug you until you purr like a kitten." She just kissed me and fell asleep before I could start the car. I drove up to Benny's apartment and knocked on the door. Junior opened it, saw me, and tried to slam it shut. I pushed it open so hard that he fell to the floor. I closed the door and sat down on a chair while he tried to get up. "You want to fight? Let's go. There's no one here to save you, and I'll beat the crap out of you and enjoy every second of it. I'm calling the police. Try it. I'll get to you before you can dial 9. We'll talk about your future. Let's talk about the past first. You were in California and came back home. Your mother was overjoyed. She was already planning her retirement in a few years and gave you a pretty responsible job. We gave you a place to live, a car to drive, and we looked after the kids as often as you let us. You would have thought you were dead and in heaven." Heather says it was the happiest time of her marriage. "You literally fell into a fire and discovered you were fireproof. Was that enough for you? Hell no, it wasn't enough. So you stole from your parents and got involved in some elaborate scheme to prove you were smarter than all of us when in reality, you were the dumbest son of a bitch on the East Coast. You abandoned a successful company that was worth more than you could ever save in a lifetime. You seemed to give up a woman who was worth 3 times more than everyone else and 2 wonderful children. Is that all? So now that you've said everything you want, what do you want, kid? What will make you happy? The suffering of everyone around you? If that's your goal, you're doing a good job. This offer is a one-time thing. If you turn it down, I'm out. For your information, a woman like Heather doesn't stay single for long, even with 2 children. Some nice man will realize what a great woman she is and make her love him for the rest of her life. Maybe you want to go to prison? That would teach you a lesson. Let me tell you something, kid. You're weak. I was on the verge of letting go of everything I had held back out of love for his family, but now it was time to take off the gloves. While he sat on the couch cowering, I paced around the room. Finally, I stopped in front of him. So what are you going to do? Are you going to act like a man, or are you going to prove that you're really a bitch? Damn it, he started crying. I thought it was funny, so I sat down while he cried. I don't have a job, and no one in this neighborhood will touch me with a 10-foot pole. I can't leave the state or I'll violate my parole. And if I don't find a job soon, I'll violate it even if I get a traffic ticket. I'll never get my family back. My parents despise me, and you probably get a lot of pleasure out of this. I hit him. Very hard. Finished complaining? I'm going to do something for you even if it's too much for you to handle. Rest assured, I'm not doing this for you but for the family I love. I threw him one of my business cards. Be at this address on Monday at 8 o'clock. If you're not there, I'm washing my hands of you. Don't wear a suit. You won't need it for a long time if you ever need it again. Wear sturdy jeans, good boots, and a work shirt. You just got a job on a construction site. You'll work without complaining, whining, or crying. Be brave and do what you're told. I'll find out if you don't. I walked to the door. By the way, 25% of your pay will be deducted weekly and sent to Heather. You still have children to support, and if you have any hope of rebuilding your family, this is a good place to start. On the way home, I wondered if anything I had said mattered. We'll see what happens on Monday. I smiled when I saw Angie wrapped up like a mummy. I once told her that she must have been a lizard in a previous life because I had never met anyone so cold-blooded. She just smiled. Lizards like to lie on rocks, I understand, but I like to lie in the arms of a man who will keep me warm. Chapter 13. No one was as surprised as I was when I saw him in the office on Monday. I assigned him to a construction crew and asked his boss and foreman not to patronize him, but to treat him calmly. Give him a chance. A lot depends on him in this job. Later, I learned that on his first day, he went home and cried because his body ached so much. The next day, he could barely work, but he came anyway. After a month, his body adjusted, and for the first time in his life, he developed real muscles. He tried his hand at all kinds of jobs and seemed to have a real talent for installing hinges and finishing sheet metal. Sometimes I would see him from my office, getting out of the truck looking like a ghost because of the dust covering the sheet metal. Heather had moved to the payroll department, so she saw his name and his first paycheck. Then a check from customer service came in for her. She burst into my office. "Did you do this, Dad? Someone had to give him a job, and I didn't want you to have to drive the kids to the county jail." I visited him and asked him nicely. "Sure, you visited him. You probably beat him up and made him come to work." "I didn't do anything like that." "If you didn't, then he's more afraid of you than I thought. How long do you think he'll last?" "Time will tell, sweetie. Now go pick up the kids from daycare." From time to time, they would meet in the hallway and barely speak. Once he begged her to let him have lunch with the children at the picnic tables near the kindergarten. She almost refused, lecturing him sternly on how to behave. But just in case, she decided to have lunch with them. Everything was going well until Linny climbed onto his lap and showed him the little helmet I had given her. "Look, Daddy, I have a helmet too. We'll be builders, like Grandpa." Thick tears streamed down his cheeks as he hugged her. Then Jeremiah turned and thanked Heather in a choked voice for being so good to him. Tears streamed down her cheeks too. When he worked in town, he tried to stop by for lunch as often as he could. He always asked Heather to join them if she had time. She always made time. He moved out of his father's house and rented a small one-room apartment near the office. I allowed him to drive one of the company's trucks to transport materials, and he tried to drive it only when necessary. It was a four-door model, so he could take the children with him when Heather allowed it. 6 months passed, and Heather walked into my office and closed the door. "Dad, can we talk?" "Of course, honey. What's on your mind?" "Benny." I knew she meant her Benny, so I nodded. "We've been talking a lot lately. He comes over to our house at least twice a week to have dinner with us. He's changing. I can see it. I need to ask him for a favor. He really wants to talk to his parents. Can I bring him over on Sunday?" His parents had disowned him. Angie didn't know I'd given him a job, and she was careful not to mention it in the conversation. I warned Heather, and she only mentioned in passing that he'd found a new job and was paying child support. "Let me talk to your mom first. I won't put you in a difficult position. I'll see how things are going and let you know." Chapter 14. Angie and Ben weren't thrilled with the idea, but they agreed to give it a try for Heather and the kids. He walked in with a surprised look on his face. The children crowded around him, showing him the new pool with a water slide and chatting nonstop. We left them alone, and after dinner, he asked his parents if he could talk to them. I gathered the children and Heather, and we went out for ice cream, returning 45 minutes later. He was gone. Angie had tears in her eyes, and Ben looked a little worried. He apologized, and I think he was sincere. He swore he'd pay us back, but we told him that if he really felt that way, he should give the money to the children. We made it clear that we would never let him work for us again, at least not until enough time had passed for us to consider him trustworthy. He said he didn't expect such forgiveness and would never let us down again. I hope he's sincere. Angie surprised me with her determination. I listened to him, and then I told him that words are easy. He wants our forgiveness, our respect. Then he needs to start earning it, both from us and from his family. Benny has a lot of obstacles to overcome, and I hope he rises to the challenge and does it. Later, as we lay in bed embracing, she surprised me with a few more details. He only had good things to say about you. You made a big impression on him and are probably a role model for him now. And then, to my surprise, he gave me some advice. He said I should put your ring on my finger and stop playing games. If I'm so afraid of commitment, maybe I should let you go so you can find someone else. I'm starting to like this guy. She poked me with her finger. Shut up, this is serious. Yes, it's serious. And since we're on the subject, will you ever marry me? She froze and I sighed, turning away from her. A few seconds later, she pressed herself against me. Honey, I was so scared. You can't prove it. But when Ben was Junior's age, he was a lot like him. I spent years trying to come to terms with something I shouldn't have had to. I still have nightmares about what I was like back then. I swore it would never happen again, that I would never let a man have that kind of power over me again. I wanted to get up, but she held me tight. I'm leaving tomorrow. I didn't expect to be slapped, but it was merciless. My vision darkened and my jaw ached. You're not leaving. I'm trying to tell you that I've changed. Right now, you have more power over me than anyone else ever has in my entire life. Your smile, your touch, the way you glow when you do something special for me and see that I like it. The way you almost light up when Heather brings the kids. I started living for that. And then, in the most awkward way possible, I tell you that if you ask a certain question, you might like the answer this time. I saw her sigh mentally and shrug. Let me think about it. I'll give you an answer tomorrow, Monday at the latest. I told him about last night when we went fishing from a platform designed specifically for that purpose, and after we caught a perch, he smiled and held out his hand to me. Congratulations, you've won over a damn attractive woman. However, if you ever treat her the way I do, I won't be able to kick your ass, but I'm a damn good shot. Keep the gun in the safe. I think I can handle him. He called from the boat to wish her luck. He hung up, laughing. I'll be your best man. Heather and Vicky will be your bridesmaids, and Jer and Linny, even though they're a little old for it, will be the ring bearers and flower girls. Think you can make it to the wedding? I'll grit my teeth and get through it. Chapter 50, 16 years later, Angie, Ben, Vicky, and I watched proudly as Lynette received her master's degree in construction management and engineering, earning 2 majors at once. Her management thesis was titled Building a Box. She used part of her thesis in her speech. She talked about her accomplishments since she was 9 years old and built her own storage box with hinges and a handle. She still has it. She then talked about how she built a birdhouse, then a doghouse, then a playhouse, several small sheds, and then a cottage, which she designed in her spare time. It was built for the whole family. My grandfather Wilkes taught me how to build by showing me the entire process from a box to a bungalow. He taught me that everything that is built is essentially a box, just bigger and more complicated, so you have to build the best boxes you can. Then, my grandfather Ben Bassett Sr. taught me how to build business relationships. Always act honestly and keep your word. And if you do that, you will always be successful, whether you make money or not. I have found that the same is true for relationships of any kind. You build a solid foundation and eliminate any weaknesses and flaws you find. My grandparents and my mother always made sure my box was solid. When I get married and start living with another man, you can be sure that our love will be built on a box with no weak spots. It was very touching. So why didn't she thank her father in her speech? He moved in with her a few months after he came to the party, and it was another month before they slept together. I gave him this task because he deserved it, and a year later I thought they had overcome their problems. And then one day he just disappeared. No warning, just late for work, packed his stuff in a truck and left. True to his word, he left a short note saying he was going back to California, that he was sorry, and that he would send money for the kids. Heather was devastated again. We put her and the kids in therapy to help them cope with the abandonment. Ben and I tried to fill the void, and it helped a little. Of course, we hired detectives who tracked him down 2 months later. He was working as a subcontractor for a construction company on a large apartment building project and was living with one of his ex-girlfriends. It seemed she was the reason he wanted to return to the West Coast. She had left and gotten married when he came home. Their relationship lasted less than a year. They kept in touch via email, writing to each other from an account Heather didn't know about. And when she told him she was single again and missed him very much, he disappeared the next day. Heather mourned him for a while, then moved on with her life. She couldn't leave her children behind to go live in the sunset. 3 months after he left, she filed for divorce at her workplace. The papers included alimony, but she left him an out. If he signed the parental rights papers, he would be free. His new woman wasn't thrilled about him giving up that portion of his income and pressured him until he signed the document. 2 years later, Heather became assistant head of human resources and payroll and had to deal with all the employees in one capacity or another. I sent her to school to get her degree and allowed her to work part-time so she could attend classes. She came back full-time, burst into my office, and jumped on my lap. "Why are you so nice to me? I never told you this, but my first wife was selfish and lied to me about being able to have children. She fought me for adoption, and when we split up, it turned out she had her tubes tied so she couldn't get pregnant. I was doomed to biological childlessness, to die unloved and alone. And then I met Angie. I knew we would never have children, but her love was worth it. And then you came along and gave me a chance to rethink everything. You and the kids have been in my heart since that first weekend, and my feelings have grown stronger and stronger. Heather, you're like a daughter to me, so I've decided to adopt you. Not legally, you're too old for that, but emotionally. And since you're my daughter, you automatically become my heir. That's why I pushed you to get your degree. When I retire, my share of the business will go to you. I talked to Sarah and David, and they think it's a good idea to keep the business in the family. All the paperwork is done, and all you have to do is get on your feet when I'm gone." She was so upset that I had to call Angie to calm her down. Angie stroked her until she stopped sniffling and smiled. "You didn't expect this turn of events, did you? Ever since you came into his life, you've been his pride and joy, almost his love, and work hard. You have 10 or 12 years to prepare." David's son went to get insurance and met Heather. Sparks flew between them, and 15 months later, I had the honor of marrying her. That's what keeping a family together means. Sarah was David's sister, and her son was a career military man, so Heather and DJ David Jr. had everything going for them. By then, they were in their 30s, and no one was surprised when they had a son, whom they named David Reginald. Heather should have warned us. My God, the two older ones were with you almost all the time, give me that. It was very, very hard, but we stuck together. Jeremiah followed Benny's example, working during the summer and school vacations at the company, with both sets of grandparents as his mentors. Lynette did the same at my firm. She even worked on a construction crew for 2 summers before joining the office to learn from her mother and Sarah. And Jeremiah earned a business degree, and within 2 years, it was clear that he would be running the family business in a few years. His grandparents couldn't wait. By the time Lynette graduated, Angie was 70 and I was 64. Angie had retired 3 years earlier, and it was my last year before Heather took over. We planned to live an active life, travel, and take care of the next generation. Jeremiah was already married with a young son and another on the way. Linny wasn't ready to settle down yet, but we knew she would soon be taken by someone who didn't deserve her. 14 years after he left, we received news that Benny Jr. had been killed in a construction accident. He was trying to unload a full bag of 32 tongue and groove boards measuring 14 by 4 or 5 feet using an electric winch. Safety regulations required the use of 2 hoists and a spotter, but he was in a hurry. He raised the hoist 9 feet in the air when the load shifted and fell on him. According to the accident report, he was crushed on impact. We were notified only 3 weeks after the funeral, when the state was sorting through his papers looking for next of kin. It turned out that his new wife had run away 3 years earlier, leaving him with 2 daughters to care for. The mother could not be found, and California wanted to know what to do with the children. Ben, Vicky, Angie, and I flew out immediately. The children were girls, one 11 and the other 9, and they were the rudest and most disrespectful children I had ever met. The older one lashed out at us. "If you're our grandparents, why have we never seen you? Because until a few days ago, we didn't even know you existed. If we had, you would know a lot more about us by now. I'm not going anywhere with any of you. Angie and Vicky burst into tears, but I pulled myself together. If they don't find your mother, you won't have a choice. If it comes to the point where your rich grandparents take you out of state custody, put you in a foster home, and pay for your upbringing, the state will take care of itself. I'm offering you, if there's nothing keeping you here, if they don't find your mother, to come back with us and see how things go. Think about it. The older one looked defiant, but the younger one was just scared, so I turned to her. And how about it, princess? New clothes, a big house, an older brother and sister who will look after you if you need it. And rumor has it, I can be a damn good grandfather. I have references, if you're interested. Benny backed me up, saying that we sometimes compete to see who spoils our grandchildren more, and then we step back and let the ladies take care of them. In the end, Angie got her way. She started showing them pictures of their older brothers and sisters, pointing out how much they looked alike and how much space we had in both houses, and showed them pictures of the summer kitchen and pool, as well as some of our boats. Benny and Vicky bought themselves a sleek boat as a retirement gift, but we still used the big boat, our third, when everyone wanted to go out. The house Vicky chose was in the country and had several acres of land. They had many animals, including 3 horses. We never felt the urge to ride horses, but Jer and Linny loved it, so they were there as often as they were at our house. We tried to spoil them, but also kept them grounded with life lessons, and they were pretty well-adjusted teenagers. This struck a nerve with the youngest, Vanessa. I've never been on a horse, Vicky smiled. Like me, she had never had children, and this was a wonderful opportunity for her. Come on over to our place, girl. I'll teach you how to ride a horse in no time. Charlene was obsessed with boats. I've never been fishing. Well, if you come with us, you'll spend so much time on the water you'll feel like a duck. We stayed with them for 2 weeks while they finished searching for their mother. We took advantage of this to take them to various places. An amusement park, a Chuvash ranch where we rode horses for the first time, but mostly we just spent time with them, assuring them that we weren't cannibals who fried babies for breakfast. Vanessa bonded with Benny and Vicky, and Charlie seemed to like us better. In the end, they came home with us, and because Vanessa insisted, they stayed to live with Benny and Vicky. Charlie went with them too. We were a little disappointed, but we understood that they needed a break, and we usually picked them up on weekends. The first year was difficult, as we had to break them of some bad habits. But by the second year, they had relaxed enough to feel safe and loved, calmed down, and fit into the family. Heather and her husband took them in, and Jer wanted them to spend time with him and his wife, a woman he had met at work. They had been dating for a year when he brought her to a party, afraid that she was Native American. No one questioned where she came from and welcomed her with open arms. She cemented her place in the family when she started bringing dishes to dinner. Once she brought a huge pot of curry, and we devoured it, ignoring the steaks and chicken. He told his younger sisters that they would use them as teaching aids when they had children of their own. They were so charmed by Mary, her Americanized name, that they insisted on wearing saris to one of her friends' weddings. Those photos have a place of honor on our wall. I think they preserved our youth. Angie attended Vanessa's graduation, but that was her last public appearance. 2 months before her 80th birthday, she fell, broke her hip, and died 2 weeks later from complications. It happened suddenly and left me devastated. But after 6 months of mourning, I realized that we hadn't had such a bad life. From the day we met, we had no one else. No dates, no romances, no other relationships. We just connected and never let go of each other. Even the second time was unusual. Every evening, I looked at the plaque I gave her a couple of years after our wedding. It said, "Most Beautiful Girl," and the name of our state with the date in a small insert at the bottom. Every year, I took it back to the store where I bought it, and they added the current year to the insert. When Lynette had her first child, I bought a new plaque that said, "Most Beautiful Girl of the Year," and started adding inserts. She giggled every time I added a year, and blushed deeply when Vanessa once asked her what GILF meant. I told her it meant Grandmother I'll Love Forever, which made her beam even more. I discussed it with Angie, and we decided that if Vanessa didn't have one yet, she could have ours. Benny and Vicky agreed that Charlie could have his. The following year, Benny passed away in his sleep. I hugged Vicky and made all the necessary arrangements. I got used to having her stay at my place a couple of times a week to make sure she was okay, and a year later she moved in with us. We never had a relationship, although we loved each other as friends. We were just two elderly people who didn't want to be alone. The children smiled, and Angie and Benny probably laughed themselves silly. Sometimes we would sit on the porch in rocking chairs, watching the sunset, remembering loved ones who had passed away, and agreeing that no matter how our lives had begun, our golden years were wonderful, and we were damn lucky with the people we had chosen to love. Once we talked about everything until late at night, and when I got up to go inside, she said she wanted to sit outside a little longer and enjoy the cool weather. I left her for 45 minutes wondering about the tears in her eyes, and then decided to bring her a blanket if she was going to stay, or help her into the house if she was ready. It seemed she didn't need the blanket anymore. She walked by still warm and with a smile on her face. Probably she and Benny were hugging like crazy right now, and Angie was smiling. I sat down next to her and waited for the ambulance, talking to her. "Vicky, it may be too late, but you got what you wanted. A good man you love, children you're raising, a big family that loves you just the way you are. Not many people can say that when they leave this world. If you can hear me, tell Angie I'll be back soon with a new poster. It will say, 'Sexiest girl on earth,' and it will be absolutely true." The paramedics arrived, and I kissed her on the cheek, wishing her a safe journey before they carefully lifted her onto the stretcher. Sighing, I started ringing the bells, knowing that soon the house would be full. I thought about the girls who, in less than a year, had stopped calling her grandma and started calling her mom. She told us it was the second most important moment of her life, right after her wedding to Benny. They would be devastated, and we had to be strong for them. To be honest, I didn't know how much strength I had left. I looked up at the stars and smiled. Soon, baby, soon. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.